we go, I'd appreciate it if you do ask questions, and then at the end we'll address all of those questions. Denise, are you able to share your screen with us?
Do you mind passing the baton to me one more time, please?
Oh, sure. Let me slow it down. Okay. You should be getting a notification right now.
All right.
Fantastic. Yes, everyone. Today on this, Denise and Andrew will be presenting to you different ways to market your cars online. I appreciate you coming to join us today. Again, for people that are just joining us, in the bottom left of the chat function, as we go through the presentation, please feel free to put questions in there, but we'll address all of them at the end. So, Denise, are you able to? Did it come over to you?
It did. Can you see my screen?
I can't yet. You have the presentation up?
Yep. It says now sharing.
Okay. Andrew, are you seeing it?
Not yet, Brian.
Okay. It may just take a second.
Okay.
If I just got a couple of chats that people can't see it yet, it should be coming up momentarily. If it doesn't come up in the next couple of minutes, I have it on my computer, so we'll still proceed as planned. Andrew, are you seeing it?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to pull it up, and as you guys are as you're going, just let me know when you would like to advance it. Let's see. All right. I haven't used PowerPoint in a little while. Let me find this button. Slideshow, there it is. Okay.
All right.
All right, everybody. Sorry for the brief delay there, but we're going to get rolling. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, take it away.
All right. So thank you, Andrew, for hosting us. This is Denise Chudy. I'm with LotLinx. I'm one of the founders. And we have Andrew DiFeo from Hyundai of St. Augustine on the line with us. And I've asked him to join our topic of VINvertising because Andrew, while he's a recent LotLinx customer, prior to working with us, he actually had been studying his inventory, looking at what was sitting on the lot, how many VDP views those pieces of inventory were getting, and had come up with his own marketing methods for growing VDP views and thereby increasing velocity. So he will bring us really good practical examples that are even outside of the realm of LotLinx that we thought were really important ways for dealers to participate in this category of VINvertising. So just as the picture shows there, taking us back to physics class back in high school, the name of the game here is that we believe that we can accelerate speed for you by creating an outside force, and in this case we're going to be shining a light on specific vehicles in order to, again, move them off the lot faster. So if we look at the next slide, which is the agenda, the things we're going to cover is VINvertising. We want to talk a little bit back to basics. So the beginning section, we're going to set the landscape, if you will, on the category of VINvertising. We're going to early on get to the punchline because I know most dealers want to hear the results first and be convinced that indeed metal will move faster. So we'll show you our data as well as some industry data. And we also want to talk about the shift in consumer. I don't think this is a topic we talk about enough, honestly, as an industry. And the fact is that car shoppers indeed want to get to a dealer's digital lot. And that's the real crux of why LotLinx is in business, is to make that connection. So we want to talk about that shift in consumer. And certainly as dealers, you have all invested heavily in your digital expertise, whether that's in skill set at your dealership or it's your actual tool set that you use. You've invested, and it's time for you to reap the rewards of that investment with the ready car shopper who's looking to engage with you. Then we'll talk briefly, I have maybe 4 or 5 slides on deep linking and some of the measurements that we would suggest you look at to understand how VINvertising works. And then we want to bring it home with Hyundai of St. Augustine. I think that Andrew has an amazing playbook and some really good best-in-class examples of how to go beyond what I'm going to talk about with deep linking, but how to think about this category. So let's talk about, next slide, the VINvertising. Then, what is it? Simply, we call VINvertising the art and science of taking each specific VIN and broadcasting it to car shoppers across any digital device that they're looking at and that they're using to shop for a car. And as the next slide will show, this VINvertising is then the name of the game is to, when you do that broadcasting of your VINs, send folks straight to your vehicle detail page on your site where you convert a shopper into a buyer. And then the next slide shows here that we like to talk about that everyone in the industry that we've all been involved in for a few decades. Before the internet came about, we did VINvertising. My first job was working at an agency, and I managed a lot of Dodge dealership advertising in the Cincinnati DMA. And every Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd get the call from my dealer customers on which cars they wanted to promote. And they were very specific about the ones they wanted to promote before they had another birthday on the lot. And those were the ads we ran. And so many of us in the industry, I think, a lot of these topics we talk about, we're really just getting back to basics, which is analyzing your inventory and, again, putting a spotlight on it. I'm encouraged more and more as I talk to dealers across the country. They're indeed thinking in that manner. And I think when we get to Andrew's point, part of the presentation you'll see he has, again, an amazing way of looking at and actually understanding how many VDP views correlate to days on lot. So in the next slide, we really want to hit home on what VINvertising is not. We're going to be at LotLinx, we're going to be purists in this model on VINvertising. Giving your inventory to a third-party site where they leverage that inventory to drive traffic and engagement on their site is not VINvertising in our definition. In this case, we're looking at a third-party VDP. Again, we would say this is not VINvertising because what's happening here is you're having cross-selling to competitors, so banner ads at the top and bottom try to lure people away from the asset that is from this dealer. We're also seeing financing offers from other lenders. So again, we're not advertising your VIN. We're instead, in this case, your asset is being leveraged to grow a business on a third-party site. And at the end of the day, very rarely is that lead form filled out. So fewer than 3% of car shoppers fill that form out and connect with, end up connecting with you. And sometimes those actual forms that are filled out are routed to other dealers. So we don't consider this VINvertising, and we don't consider this to be an adequate way for you to promote your individual VDPs for showing sales velocity. If you mind, let's go to the next slide then. Here we want to transition, and by the way, please feel free to go ahead and text in questions, and we can absolutely stop the presentation at any time if anybody wants me to stop on any of these slides. So the next few slides, we want to talk about the actual sales velocity. And what you're looking at here is our own data. So at LotLinx, we measure what vehicles, when they get a LotLinx view, you can see that in red. We're looking at used cars here. So we're looking at the top selling used cars in America from January to April. And we look at cars in red that got the LotLinx treatment. So they were indeed deep linked via LotLinx. Then in black, what you see are cars, the same make, model, year, that were not deep linked, and we're looking and comparing days on lot. So you can see in each of these cases, sending traffic to a VDP, so doing the deep linking and creating exposure in the top case for the Ford F-150 from 2014, we were able to move cars off the lot in fewer than 66 days versus the average of about 78 days. So what this tells us is this helps a car dealer move inventory faster, certainly, and then equally as important, this helps you in carrying costs, right? So you get to save money in this case with days on lot. And if the national average, I believe right now, is about $22 a day in carrying costs for a car, you start multiplying that out against the inventory on your lot, cutting back on these, anywhere from looks like 6 to about 12, 14 days makes a material difference in your bottom line. The next slide, we have an example of the new. What happens the new? And I picked, Chevy, the Chevy brand here, and some GMC cars and Cadillac and Buick across the General Motors cars. And what you can see here is that same trend. And again, these are all new. When you look at the red bar, so that will be the average vehicles that we saw for the first 4 months of this year. We saw on our platform, and these were indeed deep linked, so we drove traffic to their vehicle detail pages versus cars that did not get deep linked. Again, we're cutting back the time in the case of the Chevy Silverado 1500 by 11 days, and you can even see the GMC Terrain even more significantly. It looks like about 15 days we saved. So it's a full 2 weeks. And across our new car data set, we've absolutely seen about 2 weeks being lopped off of a car's time on lot when it gets deep linked. If you go to the next slide, this study of VIN velocity, really we want to tip our hats to Cobalt. So they were in 2012. If you haven't seen this study, I'd recommend you go ahead and Google it and watch the video. Was really the first study in mass that pointed to the same conclusion that we see every day now with our dealer customers. And this is a study that was run across 8 months, and it was 250 million actions, online actions were studied in this across 9 million VINs, and the conclusion was clear that VDP views and time spent on those VDP views were 2 of the top 4 online sales predictors. And you can see in their bar chart here, when they modeled out a vehicle that had fewer than 20 VDP views, the days on lot were over 135. And if you could get that car viewed over 30 times, the good news was you would be able to cut that in nearly in half down to 76. So again, something we study every day and on an individual dealer level, but again, in 2012, VINvertising, I think, really started to gain traction because of data like this. So that's the sales velocity. Now we want to talk about VINvertising going mainstream. One thing that you can benefit from not only moving cars off the lot faster when you do a VINvertising strategy, but there was an Automotive News article last year that talked through a lot of dealers who are looking at their inventory in this method, that now they no longer first cut price, then advertise. They're now able to turn their pricing strategy into their advertising strategy by the simple tactic of investing in growing VDP views. And in this particular example, and this is again another article you could easily Google, Trent Waybright of Kelly Automotive Group, he said that he used to look at leads, right? Leads used to be important to him, and he used to measure success. But because we all know that those numbers are dwindling and fewer people want to fill out a lead form or actually are calling you. Instead, they're doing what we call they're becoming the self-directed shopper. They're showing up on your lot, having done a lot of research, but not identifying themselves before they walk in. What he had done is turned his pricing strategy into an advertising strategy at the VDP level. So again, another really good example of somebody who's moved his business into a new direction. And then finally on the next slide, want to talk about that it's not only important to dealers, but it's important to car shoppers right now that you think through the promotion of your VINs. In 2013 was really the changing of the tide. So this year marks the 20th anniversary of digital advertising for automotive. You've probably seen a lot of the fanfare and articles about, how far have we come in 20 years. And for a car dealer, 2013 in digital marketing was a pivotal year because you had finally the car shopper saying, more so than a third-party site, more so than a manufacturer site, the most important place for me to get to when I want to buy a car is the dealer site. And the top chart shows, interestingly, that J.D. Power measured this, came up with that conclusion, and the bottom quote comes from Google's Think Google Automotive study in 2013. In this bar chart, you can see, again, back in 2001, in the early days of us, actually it's probably middle, we would probably call it the midpoint of us in digital automotive, right? In 2001, only 46% of people, when asked by J.D. Power, said, yep, I want to get to the dealer site. It's the most important place for me to go. That jumped significantly in 2012, up to 73%, and then had a huge spike in 2013. Just that 1 year really came into its own where for the first time ever, again, people were saying, I want to get to the dealer site. And then that same year, Think with Google, their automotive study, said the exact same thing, that more car shoppers stating the dealer websites are more important than any other source. So the time has come, right? So the final slide in this setup, if you will, go to the next slide then, is this year. The car dealers, this was an article that was out in the Wall Street Journal, it's on June 15th. If you go to Google News and Google this, or you send a note to me, I'm Denise at LotLinx.com, I'll send you this article. But again, a really good proof point in the history of all of us in digital marketing that the middleman, that referral service model, isn't in the best interest necessarily of a car dealer, nor is it what the car shopper wants these days. They're really looking for that direct connection, and dealers are responding with strategies like these VINvertising strategies that we're about to transition to right now. So that's the setup. Now what I'd like to do is talk specifically. I have a handful of slides here with pictures just to show you, if you're unfamiliar with LotLinx deep linking, how we do VINvertising for dealers. I'll transition then to, well, how do you measure it? How do you know it's working? And we'll show you a couple slides there, and then we'll bring it home with Hyundai of St. Augustine in some of their strategies. So here on this slide, what you see is example of what we do. So what we do is we work with third-party auto sites, and when a user gives us a signal of a make, model, and geo, once we get that signal, we then compare that signal up with a listing from one of our dealer customers. So on the left-hand side, again, from the many partners we work with, the inventory from our dealer customers, if it's eligible to appear, if it's the right make, model, geo match, that inventory appears. And when somebody selects a piece of inventory from one of our dealer customers, that's when the deep linking happens. So that's when that direct transition happens from one of our partner sites directly to the VDP of one of our partner sites. And if you wouldn't mind clicking on the next click, the difference here is also you only pay as a car dealer for a unique shopper. So here we're transitioning a model of a world of CPMs and cost per clicks to you start paying for a car shopper. You pay for an actual person, an actual digital up who can transact with you on site, whether they chat with you. Maybe they're looking at all of your photos in your gallery. They could be pricing, looking at financing options. You only pay for that person, again, when we send them over. And hopefully they're doing what most car shoppers do. When we send a shopper over, they're looking at 20% more VDPs on your site, and they're engaging with you directly. The next slide will take this a step deeper, and just want to show some more examples of how deep linking. So if you wouldn't mind clicking on the next slide. Here we go with an example of, again, I'm just going to show you some pictured examples of where this deep linking occurs. So your inventory can appear again within, somebody has done a declared make, model, geo search, and so again, your listings can appear and you'll be deep linked here. The next slide will show also, we take this one step further. Another signal people will tell us that they're interested in a make, model, geo is when they're reading content. So in this case, we have listings embedded within content. The old way used to be we used to all think, oh, somebody has to actually click on, I want to search inventory. But now because people want to do 84 different searches for inventory before they're ready to actually make a decision, we're taking these native units or these content inclusive units and moving them into a content experience to pair up a review and information about a car, in this case a Chrysler 200, with the actual inventory and directing them when somebody makes that click, directing them straight over to the inventory page of a car dealer. And then here you see another example of this within publisher VDPs. We're also, because again, most publishers are realizing that on this page when they surface their own VDP, very few people will fill it out. So we're also working in a number of ways of connecting the car shopper with the dealer. So here those links right there go straight to the dealer VDP. Again, answering the question that the car shopper wants to know is, where can I find this car on the seller's lot, which happens to be the dealer. And then the final example here we'll show is an example of within ad units. So again, here we understand somebody is in market. They've given us their make, model, in this case on the left-hand side, a Chevy Silverado 1500 near Oak Lawn. Well, what we do is we actually take our dealer customer's inventory and we show and surface that and get in front of that ready to buy customer so that they have the option of clicking directly to a dealer website. And again, as a car dealer, the only time you pay is if somebody clicks on your listing and lands on your vehicle detail page. So those are the examples. And here is the final slide on LotLinx deep linking before we get into measurement. So just to assure folks that this can be done at scale, you can see our tonnage numbers that when you aggregate an audience like we do, can reach a significant number of car shoppers, in this case 62 million. 13.6 of those we call VINtenders because they do distinct searches. Those are the ones who actually do go in and do the drop-down make, model, and geo. And across our partner sites, about 39.4 million VDPs are looked at. So again, our goal is to make sure that the highest percentages of those VDPs are happening on the dealer lot. And you can see in the right-hand side some select partners that account for about 80% of the time when a dealer works with us. Their traffic will come from those partners. We call those the chunky middle. So those are anywhere from, they have maybe 1 million up to, in some cases, 4 or 5 million unique visitors a month. So certainly, the middle chunk of the websites that are creating that statistic of 24 different sites being looked at by a car shopper. Here we're getting a mass coverage of quite a large number of those. I'm going to now transition to the measurement piece. How do you measure this? So we talked early on about velocity, the key measure, right? That's really critical that we're together looking at making sure we're moving your cars off the lot. And we like to talk a lot about when we work with dealer customers, we want to hear the stories about the 7 VW Beetles you have on your lot with those eyelashes, and those are the ones you need to move, and maybe not the stuff that's moving fast. If you're a Ford dealer, you might have some Mustangs that move themselves. Maybe those aren't the ones you focus on, right? So velocity is always going to be our anchor. But there are also things we want to look at together to measure VINvertising's impact, to understand and make sure that day to day that we're seeing the right types of things. So in this chart you can see what we'll look at is with a dealer partner, we'll look at VDP and site traffic. So we'll want to understand what's happening on those pages. We'll also look at goal conversions. There are 10 standard goals that we recommend, and it's everything from on your site, did they fill out a form, did they make a call, did they chat, did they look at multiple VDP views. We'll want to together look at those goals and understand conversions from any type of VINvertising you do. We'll also want to look at assisted goal conversions because we know when somebody's coming back and forth and looking at your inventory, we know that folks will come back to you from that original engagement. And we see typically when you VINvertise, at least with LotLinx, at least 94% plus of the site traffic we send you will be new to you. So this might be the first time they've shopped you, and so we expect that they will indeed come back. They'll gain a familiarity and they will come back. Sometimes they'll enter your URL directly into their browser because they came back to you. Sometimes they'll bookmark and they'll go straight back to that VDP. So we want to take a look at that. And then finally, sales velocity. So the final few slides I'm going to breeze through will be examples of how you look at this. We will be doing a follow-up webinar in a few weeks on measurement. We'll go really deep on measurement because we're hearing a lot of our dealer customers want to be experts, and we will be launching the industry's first ever VINvertising dashboard that you'll be able to plug and play with within your own Google Analytics. So I promise we'll go deeper into this. And again, feel free to email me, reach out to me if you wanted to have a deeper session on measurement because I know it's a hot topic. But at a top level, what you're looking at here is what we like to call the all ships rise. Or maybe the saying is all boats rise? Ships or boats? They all rise when you start putting a spotlight on your VDPs. In this case, on the left-hand side, you can see we're looking at daily sessions, we're looking at percent new sessions, daily goals completed, the value of those goals, and assisted conversion. So we like to model out and make sure we get a lay of the land before you start VINvertising with us. And then we like to look at what happens on a daily basis after. And you can see here the what happens in this case. Daily sessions up 23.4%, so double digit. More people engaging with you because quite frankly, you're getting out your inventory, you're promoting your site, so you're creating more of a traffic flow. The contribution we create is we help lift then those new sessions. So again, when you look at our individual contribution, you should see 94% plus of the time we're driving new people to your site. And in aggregate, when we look at that, then how that moves the needle for you in aggregate with all the things you do, we should indeed see, in this case we saw with this dealer, this example dealer, a 6% growth in new sessions. Daily goal completions grew 18%. Probably because most of the goals you have are centered around things that move inventory off the lot, right? And again, if you saw all the slides we looked at earlier, advertising VIN by VIN, your inventory moves metal off the lot, and it increases the value of those site visits, which is what that goal value is indicative of, and also your assisted conversions, the people who are going to come back to you because they started to gain a familiarity. So this is all Google Analytics data. The next slide is also taken from Google Analytics, and again, we could probably do a full hour just on these two slides, right? And how do you measure it? How do you track it? But I want to take it at a top level, get folks familiar with. There are 10 types, so we're going to look at goal conversions when we work together. And again, we encourage you to absolutely work with us to set up, or on your own, if you do any VINvertising, you absolutely want to measure by goals. And I've highlighted here, the thing that you will see mostly from a VINvertising strategy, and that is a significant growth in the number of people who actually look at your VDPs and actually engage in a search activity on your site, or actually searching your activity. And this is the name of the game. We're trying to move people from searching activity on third-party sites, and instead when we hand a shopper to you, they should engage in your site and now start shopping your inventory. And this plays out time and time again in Google Analytics data that together we look at with our dealer customers.
Denise, I have a question here from Tom Hawkins. He said, is there a benefit to deal directly with LotLinx versus one of the resellers?
We would encourage you to work with the party that you're most comfortable with. So if you have one of our certified consultants in your market, or somebody you've worked with that you have entrusted in the past and you're comfortable with that resource, you will work with them in the same way that you would work with somebody who's on my sales team. And we'll work hand in hand with that sales agent on the back end, and you'll work directly with us on account management. So I would leave that up to you in terms of who you're more comfortable with, but you're not going to get a different level of service from my team at all. We're going to support that sales agent, whether they're on the LotLinx payroll or they're one of our certified consultants. You will get the same level of partnership either way. So again, I would leave it up to, and yes, indeed, on this, the follow-up question, indeed, on the price. We're pricing transparent at $399, so we're 100% fully transparent in our price. That's one thing about the model. So by way of background, I come from Google. I was Google's first head of automotive back in 2002, and I was there for 8 years in the early days, and one of the things that was my favorite thing to talk about at Google, which we've replicated here, and you've probably heard Len Short and Dean Evans talk quite a bit about at LotLinx, is pricing transparency. So we make sure that there is full pricing transparency in the market so that you know that there aren't any side deals cut, and that's, again, back to the Google days. That was how we worked at Google. It was fully transparent. You knew exactly what you were paying, and we want to keep that same transparency here because nobody wins if there are hidden prices. So indeed, the certified consultant as well as our LotLinx seller will indeed be selling you at the same, will be offering the same $399 price. Thank you for the questions. So I'm going to wrap up then the measurement with the sales velocity. I want to talk at two last slides, and then we'll get into the Hyundai of St. Augustine. Here would be the example. So I showed early on the aggregate. This is an example of sales velocity that you'd want to look at on your own, and when you work with us, we would look at on your behalf through our tools to understand when you put at the top, you're looking at a 2013, for example, Volvo XC60, when you apply VINvertising, in this case, LotLinx deep linking to 2 vehicles out of the 8 that were in your inventory, the 2 that got VINvertised moved off the lot in 2 days. Wow, that's pretty quick. Versus the 6 that did not get deep linked via LotLinx. It took 9 days. And then down the line, here's the 2012 Jaguar XJ. And I just threw in a couple examples here to give you a range. Here you have a more of a luxury brand. We saw 2 VINs, 18 days. The 1 VIN we didn't see, 34 days. And then down to a more mass appeal car, a 2011 Toyota Avalon. We saw 4 VINs. We moved those off the lot. Looks like, I think that's a 6 or an 8, but it's certainly fewer than 12, right? So we moved them off the lot in fewer time than when they didn't get, again, that spotlight on the VIN, that people weren't connecting directly to the VDP. And then the very final slide, I want to talk to qualitatively here what we see. And again, this gets back to when you send somebody to your VDP, when you send somebody to your site, you start to see that they're using you to shop inventory. So in this case, this was early June. We talk about the day in the life of Shopper One, and we have tools that illuminate this, but you should be able to see this pattern on your own site. If you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and click through on all the different nodes, and I'll talk through what happens here in this one day. So at 1:34 p.m., we deep linked a Shopper One, we call it Shopper One, to an SRP on a dealer customer site. And that the reason why I landed on SRP, likely the car was sold. So by the time we got the inventory, we promoted it, the car moved off the lot. Good news is when we sent that customer to the dealer site, they landed on the search results page where they started to, and you can see the different nodes here, they started to conduct a search on the dealer site. So here's, again, a qualitative example of us transferring a shopper to the dealer. At 1:35, so they land on the SRP, they do a search. So the search they decided to do was for a car under 1,999. They landed on a 2007 Saturn or a VDP. 2 minutes later, they clicked over to the button to value your trade. So clearly something resonated and said, oh, this is looking good. Let me see what my trade looks like. What would I get for my car if I brought it in? Spent about 3 minutes, and then at 1:41 at the top right, you can see they clicked on value trade again. They wanted to see, so maybe they went back, they looked, they thought, oh, let me, I'm not going to trade in my car. Let me see if I can trade in my wife's car. And then they spent some time on the site. You can see then at 2:05, They then clicked over 2005 Chevy Cobalt VDP and spent time there. One more click, please, of this slide, and you can see when we look at this in aggregate, what happens is, we might just click one more, and we'll load up then car comparison. So for these cars that they looked at the Cobalt, they looked at the Aura, both sold. In a short period of time. There are comparable price points. They both moved off the lot. So again, this is a qualitative example of the power of what happens and the shopping activity you start to see. And to take a note from Brian Pash's book, he always talks about, you're in e-commerce. You're in the e-commerce business now when you're in automotive. I think this is an illuminating example of what will happen when you start driving folks to your VDPs and creating this traffic. As Brian Pash puts it, you now become an e-commerce director, and the name of the game for you is to pretend like you're an Amazon retailer yourself. Pull people in, show them your inventory, help them shop your inventory, which will in turn move your inventory off the lot. So that's it for the LotLinx portion. If there are no other questions, I would love to transfer now over to Andrew of St. Augustine Hyundai so he can talk about what he has seen in his VINvertising strategies.
Actually, we have one last question, everybody. Okay. Do you see a variation in effectiveness of this product with different vehicles, such as domestic vehicles versus imports?
We have not. We have seen rather consistently, and we can send out. I see Tom here has asked some specific questions. Tom, we'll go ahead and send you. We have by every brand. We've studied this. We don't see any compelling conclusions that imports versus exports versus, imports versus domestic versus any type of variations. We tend to see rather more emphasis on right now. We're really focused on the vehicles when we talk to a dealer customer. Again, getting more specific at a VINvertising strategy of let's put emphasis on those vehicles. If you tell us that, again, you have certain vehicles, and I think the example sites you'll see here from St. Augustine show exactly if you have those vehicles that are about to celebrate a birthday, let's focus there first. Let's not polish the trophy of the vehicles that somewhat move themselves. So that would be my number one takeaway answer to your question is let's look at your individual vehicle inventory and move that. Should we move on to St. Augustine?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you, Denise. Thanks, Brian, for hosting me, and thanks for everybody for taking time out of their busy days, especially the first day of the month, to view this webinar. In the interest of time and respecting people's time, I'm going to give a 45-minute presentation in about 15 minutes, so I'm going to talk fast, and I'm going to skip over some of the things that aren't necessarily relevant to VINvertising today, but we'll kick it off with kind of in this day and age, now that the Internet exists, it was supposed to be easier to find customers, but this picture I think tells a good story that even with less dealers than we had in 2009 and was supposed to be less competition, it seems that there's even more competition. Before the Internet existed, there was you had TV, radio, direct mail, billboards, a couple other little forms of advertising that really wasn't accountable. It was kind of spray and pray approach. Now the Internet came along, and I think today we're probably up to well over 200 to 300 vendors at any conference that you go to that have some form of digital marketing. We know consumers are jumping to well over 20 sites or sources for information, and it's frustrating as dealers, as digital marketers, as Internet managers. Where do we place our money? To Denise's point, and the article in the Wall Street Journal, there is kind of this discussion on third-party versus first-party. I'm in the camp that you need a good mix of both, and we can talk about that in a different discussion. But on the next slide, we want to look at, so in today's day and age, we have to be connecting the consumer with the car. I'm a firm believer, and I have been for the last couple of years, that we live in a vehicle VIN-based advertising world. A lot of that came out of reading the books Velocity by Dale Pollock and learning it on the used car strategy, but now we're noticing shopping behavior on the new car side, the same thing, that the consumer doesn't want the 2015 Sonata. They want the 2015 Pearl White Turbo Limited Sonata with the popular equipment package and these accessories on it. And they're trying to find that specifically in their internet research. On the next slide, we look at a quote that most everybody knows, that 50% of our advertising is wasted, we just don't know which half. The sad thing about this was this gentleman said this in the late 1800s. So over 130 years later, we're still hearing this conversation of which half of my advertising is wasted, and I challenge some people that almost well over 50% of their advertising is wasted. So there's got to be a better way, especially with the promise of internet and digital marketing, that there was supposed to be better attribution to this, and this is kind of how this presentation and this study came about. On the next slide, we look at the metrics that over the years we've been kind of taught to follow on our website. Visits. The problem with visits is, if you've seen some recent studies over the last 3 months, it's really coming to light now that over 50% of kind of the activity on the internet isn't by human beings. There's a significant amount of fraudulent activity, whether it's bots, spiders, crawlers, a lot of other different things going on the internet. You can read about that. Just do a Google search. Even Google admits to that. So visits there's a lot of noise in visits on your page, on your website analytics. Your click-through rate, it's an upstream metric. It's not a good way to attribute a sale to something just because somebody clicked on a display ad or a pay-per-click ad somewhere. To Denise's point about setting up goal conversions, that's definitely something you should do in Google Analytics, and those goal conversions really should be vehicle detail page views. Leads are great. Okay, there's no question that leads on your first-party website are not great, but it's a very small percentage of how consumers are contacting dealerships. In fact, a recent study showed that over 60% of the first contact with dealerships was straight walk-in traffic. Okay, it went 60% walk-in. The next closest one was a phone call. The next closest ones were emails to a dealership, followed up by lead forms and chats in the single digits. So over 60% of your customers are just walking into the dealership as their first point of contact with you. Bounce rate, time on site. Again, is a high bounce rate mean something bad? Well, maybe not if the consumer's getting to exactly to where they wanted to get to from the ad that they clicked on versus having to go through 5 or 10 different pages. Same thing with time on site. If you have a low time on site, maybe your website's really good at giving the consumer exactly what they were looking for. You're setting up landing pages that when somebody clicks on an ad, they get to that landing page and it's exactly what they were looking for. On the next slide, we'll go through a study that CDK, formerly Cobalt, did. So this is kind of in line with what Denise had mentioned about the VIN views, was that if you look at this graph, and you'll see at the bottom the VDP views, the form leads, the hours and directions, and the visits. When a consumer that gets to your website does all 4 of those things, you have almost 100 times better chance of selling them a car versus just a singular visit, and then it goes up the scale there. So when they do all 4 of those things, and again, we talked about form leads being kind of rare, but even if it's just a VDP view, an hour and direction view, and a visit, it's still almost 50 times versus just that initial visit. So we wanted to look at key behaviors that lead to sales. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about our strategy, and I'm going to rush this because I know we're kind of constrained for time. We started with a conquest strategy. We said, what can we do at the Tier 3 level to drive consumers to our Sonata? Okay, we wanted to sell more Sonatas. We did some studies and found that the Nissan Altima was the most likely candidate that we could possibly conquest to them. So we created an ad campaign with CDK that showed that close to 20% of consumers, only 20% on the next slide, purchased the brand they originally had in mind. So we thought that the conquest was a good opportunity here, and we wanted to do it at the Tier 3 or dealership level versus the Tier 1 being the national level, Tier 2 being your ad association level. So on the next slide, we talk a little bit about our strategy. The key thing here with this conquest was it wasn't just going to be a cookie-cutter campaign. We wanted to integrate a lot of different elements, including search engine marketing, display advertising, as well as retargeted display advertising. And we wanted to make sure, if you click through this slide, that we got to a robust landing page that gave the information to the consumer that they were looking for. When initially they were looking for an Altima, now they're considering Sonata. Here's why Sonata is better. So just a point here is whenever you're doing your digital advertising, make sure your landing page has links to direct links to your inventory, a lead form. I know I didn't say that there's a lot of leads being sent in, but you still want to make it easy for them if they do want to do that. You've got our phone number there as well as current offers. So just some of the key elements you want on their landing page. Don't have any of your digital advertising go to your home page. So on the next slide, what we learned from this was we didn't really have enough data to determine whether this was an effective campaign or not. But if you click through this whole slide, Brian, but just keep it up on this slide. Okay, so here's the money slide. So along with what Denise was talking about velocity, is if you learn anything from my part of this presentation, it's this slide here. So on the right-hand side, you're going to see this is the lifetime inventory days of our vehicle subsets. The top bar is VINs that were touched by advertising that we did with CDK. They had a 36-day lifetime in inventory. The next subset of non-ad VIN views, so VINs that had views but they weren't touched by any of our advertising, had about an 82-day turn rate. Now here's the interesting thing, is that vehicles that had no VIN views, and it was a pretty decent amount of our new vehicles and not really that many of our used vehicles that had no VIN views, sit on the lot for 176 days. So from this, we learned that vehicles viewed by advertising traffic sell 2.3 times faster than vehicles without ad traffic views and 4.8 times faster than vehicles that had no views at all. So this kind of said, we turned on a light bulb to say, okay, let's take this conquest strategy and switch it up. If you go to the next slide, okay, every dealership has aged inventory. So we wanted to take this data that we learned about ad-touched VIN views and create an ad campaign around our aged inventory. So on the next slide, we're going to look at some of the ad elements that we did to create this. So again, going back to pay-per-click marketing, display marketing with a specific offer, and then most importantly, if you go to the next slide, we're right there. We have a landing page. Again, I talk about this landing page. So any of these advertisements that the consumer clicked on around this aged inventory campaign went to a landing page that displayed the actual inventory that I wanted them to see. So it wasn't even just all of our Sonatas or all of our aged units. I had a specific subset of aged Sonatas that I wanted to focus on. If you go to the next slide, you can actually, and it had the special offer attached to it, as you can see there. On the next slide, it's just going to talk about our aged inventory. You can go to the next slide. So we selected our aged inventory with 0 VIN views that had the highest number of days in inventory. And then on the next slide, we're looking at how we merchandise them. Again, creating a specific landing page that all of our advertising was directed to. It could also be found within our navigation bar. On the next page, you'll see on the actual search results page that the special offer is made available to the consumer, along with any specials and discounts that we have. And on the next page, you'll also see that we did make it on our home page one of the specials. So just in case somehow the consumer did navigate back to us, whether it was direct traffic or through Google Organic, and they got to our home page, our specials were made prominent there. So I'll give you the results of this in a second, but basically the lesson we learned from this on the next slide was make it easy for customers to find the cars you want to sell. Very similar to how your general manager or general sales manager, your inventory manager might say, okay, we need to move the lot around and we want to make sure that our oldest cars are up front, or all the red cars that we ordered that we haven't sold yet are put up front. Very similar on your digital landscape, and it's a functionality that LotLinx can do, is you don't have to give LotLinx all your inventory, or in this case, I don't have to advertise all my inventory. I can pick a specific subset of inventory that I want to sell. It could be based on a particular model that I have too many of. It can be based on aged inventory, so on and so forth. So on the next page, we'll go over the results. So in just a 30-day time period, we started with 31 Sonatas that were over 60 days in inventory with 0 VIN views. Remember, these are new cars, not used cars. If these were used cars over 60 days, I'd probably have to fire myself. So new cars, we had 16. We sold 16 of those in just a 30-day time period through this advertising campaign. So pretty powerful. Briefly, I'm going to go through another concept that if you don't have the capability now, your website provider should have this in the next year or so. If they don't, you should probably switch website providers, is the personalization of your website. Again, I use CDK as my digital solutions provider. They're big into personalization. Another topic that you'll hear about over the next year is audience management. That's another big hot topic in the industry, but in this case, the personalization of a website is very similar to how sites like Amazon behave, how iTunes behave. Pretty much the majority of the Internet behaves, except Automotive. Well, now Automotive's in this space, where the system, even before you get there, can learn about you and personalize the website experience to them. So on the next slide, we have a customer here that is thinking about Sonata. So you saw our homepage previously. Well, now the homepage knows that this customer is looking for Sonata. It's going to have Sonata specials. It's going to have Sonata customer reviews, and also our inventory box, which if you look at your analytics on a heat map, this is our most used tool widget on our front page, is that search our lot functionality. People, again, want inventory. They want to drill down to the exact, they've been doing months and months of research. They know the color codes better than we do. They want the exact new vehicle or used vehicle that they've been doing research on. So that's why that inventory and tools like LotLinx are so important. On the next page, just another example. This guest is looking for a Santa Fe Sport. So again, we've got the home page tailored towards the Santa Fe Sport, the inventory set up to search for Santa Fe. We're not serving them up Hyundai Accent offers, which is our compact vehicle. If you go to the next page, just kind of summarizes that 2 different shoppers, 2 different experiences. Here are the results from that personalization on the next page. If you go back to the slide about, if you think back to the slide about visits, hours and direction views, leads, and form views, the propensity to buy, the high propensity to buy without the personalized experience was about 7.5% of my traffic. Once they received a personalized experience, it was about 132% higher. So that personalized experience gives a better, just like in a dealership, a better consumer experience usually leads to a sale. A better website experience usually leads to a sale as well. And back to kind of the philosophy of LotLinx, and what we did in this study is deep linking inventory to VINs. VIN-based advertising is going to give the consumer a better experience because it's in our ecosystem of what the consumer was actually looking for, and there's not a lot of noise out there from third-party sites, whether it be advertising, whether it be other dealers' vehicles. Getting them in your own ecosystem on your your website is so important, and creating landing pages, even if it's not a tool like LotLinx, just make sure your landing pages are geared towards what the goal of your marketing strategy was, instead of just having a one-size-fits-all strategy. So I know I talked very fast. I probably didn't breathe between one of those slides, but I wanted to keep this under an hour for everybody. So feel free, if you don't have a question now, to reach out to me via LinkedIn or through my email address to go from there if you have any questions.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Just so everybody knows, this conversation doesn't end right now. We're going to, if you go to Auto Success Webinars, it's a group on Facebook. You'll be able to reach both Denise and Andrew with further questions. And I know a lot of times when you get a whole heck of a lot of information, it takes a little while to digest it and realize what you have questions about. So you're welcome to join that group and ask them questions directly. Also, if there's someone else in your dealership that you'd like to share this presentation with that wasn't able to make it today, please send me an email, and I'll be able to send you a recording of this presentation. My email address is Brian with an I, at autosuccessonline.com. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? Well, I have one. I have a question I'd like to ask. What percentage of dealerships would you say are actually doing this right now?
Denise, you might have more insight to that.
Yeah, we are seeing, oh boy, if I were to think about percentage, maybe 10, 15%, but gaining momentum. It seems that each week that I'm sitting with a dealer, more and more the conversation is aligning around VINs. And I was just in one yesterday with a dealer in Kalamazoo, and he came to the table with, here's my inventory by days on lot, and how are we going to move this? So I'm feeling more and more that it's growing pretty rapidly, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, 25 to 30, 40% of dealers out there are thinking, again, about dissecting their inventory and making sure that the cars they need to move are getting their fair share of views.
Yeah, I would agree with Denise that it's probably around that, anywhere between 10 and 20% level, but gaining a ton of momentum. Companies like LotLinx, and actually really, to my knowledge, and this isn't a plug for LotLinx, I really don't know of any other company that does deep linking like LotLinx does. They've been around for about, almost 2 years now, Denise?
Going on three to 4 years now. Yeah.
Okay. So and nobody's really challenged them in this space, but dealers are really starting to see the importance of the vehicle-based advertising world. So I think within the next even just a couple of years, that number is going to be closer to 40 or 50%.
Okay, we've got another question. Is it a good strategy for a smaller dealers to start out targeted aged inventory only, or new and used? That's from Tom Hawkins.
Yeah, I don't know if you, Andrew, you have a point of view on that one?
Sure. I would say every dealership or even every business, inventory is your most important driver of your success or failure. In a car dealership, you have several different types of inventories. You have new inventory, used inventory, parts inventory, and the labor time of your technician's inventory. If you can manage those 4 inventories properly, I don't care what brand you have, what location you are in the world, if you can manage those 4 inventories properly, you will be successful. Aged inventory on any of those things causes such a financial drain on the profitability of the dealership. It's amazing. So always start with your aged inventory first. If you're a small dealership and you want to become a bigger dealership, on new cars you have to price your cars very competitively. I'm sorry, but I'm a believer that new cars are a commodity. Other than maybe some really unique vehicles that are coming out, out. This is the world that we live in, and we choose to stay in this business that we live in. On used cars, convince your owner, your dealer principal, or whoever has the purse strings that if you want to get bigger, start with used cars, and it's really just about having a ton of VINs on your lot that are merchandised. First of all, they have to be the right VINs. There's a lot of tools to go out and get that, but then you have to merchandise them properly with tools like LotLinx or with advertising that's directing the traffic to your website. A dealer with 100 used cars in inventory, if they're the right cars and they're merchandised properly, is going to be a much bigger dealer than somebody that has 40 used cars in inventory.
We've got another question from Jerry Chance. This is for Andrew. Can you quantify the financial impact of long-term days on lot, extra 100 days on your gross, your floor plan cost, etc.?
Yes, I don't have the great question. Don't have the exact answer, Jerry. You can find it somewhere in the NADA website, but you're touching on all the exact points. Gross, okay, we want to take shorter deals on cars that have been here longer. The floor plan expense that we've paid on those vehicles, the dealership's probably going to have to spiff the salespeople to actually pay attention to those cars and not walk around. Lot damage increases on those cars, batteries die, tires go flat, flat spots appear on tires, so on and so forth. All of those things, model year changeovers, banks advancing less money on last year's models. So great question, Jerry. The exact number I don't have, but I know NADA has a calculation that they show how much every day past a certain time frame costs you in those. So holding for gross on an older unit just makes 0 cents in the grand scheme of things. In this day and age, if you're merchandising and marketing your vehicles properly on new cars and used cars, probably after 30 days, if the car hasn't sold, you've probably got it priced wrong or it's just the wrong vehicle. Just get rid of it. On new cars, you really just have to think about an aggressive strategy pricing-wise to get rid of it before that 60-day-old unit becomes a 365-day-old unit.
All right. I believe this is for Denise. Jeff Purcell wanted to know if you would mind sending a list of the partner sites where the inventory is listed so he can check them out himself.
Absolutely, Jeff. Coming your way.
And Jerry,
Jeff's email address as well. Afterwards, you can send it to him.
Jerry, yes, about $25 a day. I believe I'm getting old, but I believe I recall that's what they had as the number.
Well, great. If that's all the questions that we have, I really appreciate everybody coming today and taking time out of your day. And actually, Monty, a copy of this webinar will be sent. I'll send a copy of this to everybody that attended. That way you can share it with other people in your dealership. And please, let's continue the conversation. Go to Facebook and join the Auto Success Webinars group, and you'll be able to reach both Andrew and Denise. As you work through this process and come up with more and more questions, feel free to go there or reach out to them directly, or myself. This is Brian with Auto Success, and hey, I really appreciate Denise and Andrew taking the time out of their day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Great. Well, hey, it's been a great webinar. I hope you all join us again for a future one. Thank you.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye.